you can tell, this is very out of tune. And the consequence of an out-of-tune instrument is a very poor performance, as well as not having fun and enjoying music. So today I'll talk to you about tuning instruments, specifically the piano, which is one of the most difficult instruments to tune. I play saxophone, clarinet, flute, as well as piano, so I'm well versed in music and how tuning works, as well as the technique used while tuning. Today I'll talk to you about the basic parts of the piano, a little bit about the actual process of tuning a piano, as well as a little bit of math behind how tuning works and how a pitch is actually in tune. Tuning a piano is important, like I said, because it's very good to enjoy music, as well as most people have a piano in their homes, which is a very large investment. So you want to make the most of that investment by having a well-working instrument. So first I'll begin by describing some of the main parts of the piano. According to classical.com, there are 6 main parts of the piano. The case, which is the outer wooden frame. The frame, which is inner metal part, which holds the tension in the strings. The strings, being made of steel and copper, help produce the different pitches of the piano. The soundboard, which helps the strings resonate more freely and produce the sound at a louder, more audible volume. The action of the piano, which is any part of the piano which strikes the strings to create the sound that you hear, as well as pedals. Pianos range from having either 2 or 3 pedals, which can either dampen the sound, sustain the sound, or soften the sound. So now that we understand a little bit of the parts of the piano, how it works, I can talk to you a little bit about the process of tuning a piano. So when you tune a piano, you use 3 basic tools. One, you use a tuning hammer, which is used to turn the pins on a piano. You also need rubber dampeners, which you put in between the strings so that you can only tune one string at once. This helps the tuner cancel out all the noises the piano might be making. And finally, you need a tuning fork so you can tell if the pitch is in tune or not. When tuning a piano, you use a very systematic approach. First, you set the temperament of the piano, which is tuning the middle 2 octaves very perfectly to your tuning fork or tuner. Once these are set, you can then continue using the tuning hammer to turn the pins and tune the rest of the piano in octaves, which are a very perfect interval due to its mathematical relationships. It's important to remember when tuning a piano to turn the pins slowly because the strings are under very high tension, so that it can be very easy to break the strings if you're not careful when tuning the piano, according to an article entitled Classical Music. Also, now that we see that tuning the piano is a fairly simple process, it's also important to understand that it takes many years of skill and practice in order to become good and to have the aural ability to hear whether a pitch is in tune or not. So in order to hear if something's in tune, we can talk a little bit about the math and science behind how a note is sounded. So when the piano string is struck, it produces a frequency. The different frequencies produce what we hear as different pitches, either being higher or lower, according to PrecisionStrobe.com. An octave consists of the most perfect tune because the frequencies are either double or half of the note below it. For example, an octave would be a frequency of 100 hertz or cycles a second compared to 200. That difference would be considered an octave. The other perfect interval would also be a fifth, which has a ratio of 3 halves. So, for example, if one had a frequency of 100 hertz a second, a perfect fifth above that would have a frequency of 150. So now that we understand this perfect tuning system a little better, it's important to understand that we tune a piano what's called an equal temperament, which divides the octave up into mathematically equal portions. Now, these portions don't sound exactly in tune. However, it's the best way to tune a piano because it distributes the unevenness in pitch across an entire octave, making it very difficult to hear the out-of-tuneness, according to howtotuneapiano.com. So by mathematically separating across the octave, you can see the notes are evenly spaced out. However, for them to be heard as perfect, they would actually need to be tuned to these different frequencies. So, for example, when tuning a piano, the different frequencies, the piano tuner would listen for these different frequencies. For example, the difference between 400 hertz and 401 hertz, the piano tuner could hear as 1 cycle per second difference, which is called a beat. These beats are very important for the piano tuner because they listen for these beats, and the more beats there are, the more out of tune the piano is. So, because of these beats, we're able to determine whether the piano is in tune or out of tune. A thing that piano tuners do to compensate for whether a piano is well in tune or in tune based on being heard is called stretching the piano. So the lower octaves are tuned lower than they should be, and the higher octaves are tuned slightly higher than they should be. This allows for the piano to both be mathematically perfect, as well as for the piano to sound very well intervals for the ear to the ears. So this is why we should be well versed in tuning pianos, because it's very important to make the most of your investment. Because a piano can be a very costly expenditure, so you want to be able to enjoy music by having the proper instrument and proper equipment. Now that we know these basic parts of the piano, a little bit of how tuning works, and a little bit about the math behind this system, we can now appreciate music in a greater way and be able to work on our own instruments to enjoy that better. Thank you for your time.